Good afternoon, YouTube. You're all very welcome to Thursday's US session open as we look to day two of Powell's, Fed Chair Powell's testifying. Today he is testifying in front of Congress as well. So as we look at the price action into today's open, let's have a quick look through the economic data that came through right through the morning, right through the afternoon today. So first things first, as we look at the economic calendar today, we had a raft of preliminary PMI information right through Europe, the Eurozone, France, Germany, and of course we have the US coming out in a little under half an hour. Now, broadly speaking, these PMIs all have come in above that kind of watermark, the 50 threshold. So the 50 threshold basically states that anything above 50 in PMIs is expansionary and means or enables growth. Now, when we look at the actual data, the forecasts against the actual figures, we can see across the board all of the PMIs through France, Germany, the Eurozone, and in the UK this morning have all disappointed. They have all come out under expectation, and I suppose that is a telltale sign for I suppose the broader consensus over the next kind of 3 to 6 months, as I suppose the broader economic outlooks become a little bit more precise into H2 of 2022. Now, as we alluded to, we do have the US PMIs out at 2:45 p.m. UK time. So again, it'll be interesting to see how does the preliminary figures act against forecasts and of course the actual figures as well. And as we know, Fed Chair Powell yesterday testified, I think it was about 2:35 when he started yesterday, 2:32 p.m. And we did see that massive movement in the markets, which we'll obviously talk through now in a moment. So I suppose the near term focal point for the afternoon is assessing and evaluating the price action into today's session open, first and foremost, and then being able to articulate a clearer viewpoint through the course of 3 p.m. as he steps onto the stage for testifying. And of course, tonight, the bank stress test as well. So banking stress test tonight will be important to determine the liquidity within all the major institutions. Now, as a little caveat with the bank stress test, we do have to factor into consideration off the back of the COVID stress testing requirements in terms of liquidity was changed and was marginally different in comparison to what it was pre-COVID because of the onset of COVID. So we're not expecting any of the main banking institutions to portray any stress testing issues. However, we will be kind of watching the figures, watching the results as it emerges tonight to, I suppose, to get a more deeper dive into the figures and as the data comes through. So as we look at the price action today, yesterday, broadly speaking, you only have to look at any of the indices to see that when Chair Powell took onto the stage yesterday, we had seen massive rallying from approximately 2:30 p.m. yesterday's open right through 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock into the session highs, which came through at around about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock yesterday. So broadly speaking, yesterday, the markets compiled, whether it's the NASDAQ, the S&P or the Dow Jones, all finished fairly strongly yesterday at or close to session highs. Now, overnight, we had seen a little bit of a pullback, again, correction, similar to what we saw on Tuesday night into Wednesday. But largely speaking, this week, the markets are recovering off of that dump that we saw through the 15th and 16th of June last week. So again, assessing the price action into today's open, we can see that the markets are very much or close to yesterday's session highs as we look at the bid. So on the S&Ps, area of interest really comes into the focal point between 3780, 3800, of which we're standing just underneath the 3800 at around about 3790. The Dow Jones, again, very, very similar, has come back into yesterday's session highs at around about 30,700. So it'll be interesting to see how does the price action fare out through the course of today's open in that first 30 minutes of the session, but also then progressively then through to 3 p.m. as Fed Chair Powell gets onto the stage and through the course of the session as well. So NASDAQ, again, in symmetry, all showing fairly decent run-ups this week after what was a very, very significant sell-off. But overall, fairly choppy movements this week, a lot of short-term back and forth movements. So traders has to become very, very nimble into not overextending their positions, knowing when to cash out, when to bank those profits, and then being able to, I suppose, watch and wait for the next setup. And that's obviously something that Educated Trade we condone, or we kind of promote quite a lot, is not marrying your position, being nimble enough to take those profits when they come and then wait for the next setup. So indices collectively, broad three, NASDAQ, S&P and Dow Jones, all at session highs. So when we look at the market profile now in a moment, we'll be able to look at the shorter term levels of interest for today's session. Now, broadly speaking, just before we move across to our market profiles, gold has been fairly choppy again over the last, well, through the month of June specifically, but in the last couple of weeks or so, we're very much back and forth between this 1810 and 1855 level, where the price action is meandering back and forth. Now, yesterday, the price action did get a fairly decent buy up into, I suppose, those session highs just under 1850, and then we did actually slightly turn sour. Now, again, the commodity prices this week have been kind of marginally lower. The oil prices has come off approximately kind of $10-12 from those highs tail end of last week. So just in the broader consensus of things, it's just been able to, I suppose, again, being nimble. Now, again, today, the gold prices has kind of bounced, rallied off that kind of 1820, 1825 handle, and we're kind of back into that 1840 midpoint where we've kind of been for the last couple of days. So overall on gold, not really too much happening. But again, I suppose knowing your levels, knowing your areas of interest for the trading session, and obviously, of course, trade the week as it develops. Gold, in the meanwhile, as we look at the gold chart here, price action again off that kind of 105 handle that we've rejected this week or last week, kind of topped out. Price action again had broken structure. We've come back into this refined level at 105, and we're still holding under 105. So if we're looking for the indices to progress higher, again, that puts a little bit more pressure on the dollar prices as we progress into, obviously, Powell testifying today again, the bank stress test later on tonight, and obviously, of course, off the back of those PMIs, which will be coming out in the next 15 or 20 minutes. So there's plenty of stuff, plenty of information coming out over the course of the afternoon to prepare ourselves for, to get ready for, and then obviously take the markets as they come through the afternoon. So again, realistically, it then becomes a case of just watching the price action into the session open, and then, of course, through the afternoon, broadly speaking. So as we look at the market profiles now, first one on our list is the SPX or the S&P 500s. As we look at our levels for today, on the open, 37.55 is our point of control on the S&Ps, and as we look at our I suppose 2:30 prints, so 2 o'clock is our C letter prints, we're seeing the price action actually move modestly above where we were at the point of control. So the point of control alludes to the price action pre-market this morning holding this shorter term consolidation, and in the last couple of hours or so, we've left this consolidation around 37.50, 37.60, and have progressed higher into yesterday's session highs. So yesterday's session highs, I think, is going to be a telltale sign to see how does the price action develop. And if we go back to yesterday's session highs in the S&Ps, we can see that very, very clearly. 37.17, and of course we're well above those session highs people see yesterday, but yesterday's session highs, as we know, into the tail end of yesterday, 3800. So 3800 is going to be the fulcrum point today to determine, does the price action break through and continue progressing higher, or do we see another bat of selling from this level of interest and for the price action to repeat what happened yesterday and roll back into this 37.50 range. So again, it'll be interesting to see on the 30-minute prints. We can kind of see that there very much curtailed in this liquidity area up here, and then it just becomes a case of watching the price action as it develops. Now, of course, on the NASDAQ, if we look at the NASDAQ next very quickly, again, areas of interest, 11,500 is our point of control. So way back in this region here is kind of where we're seeing the most of the price action this morning. And again, in the last couple of hours or so, we've seen the price action rally back into yesterday's session highs. So this 11,700, which would have been yesterday's value highs, is kind of the area of interest that we should be focused on today to see how does the price action react. And of course, these session highs from yesterday alludes to the FOMC highs that we saw last week off the back of the Fed FOMC committee meeting, where the price action actually rejected in this region. So we're seeing a lot of liquidity again off this 11,700, 750 levels. So again, watching that closely today for developments and updates, and we can see that as well. Okay, currently speaking, we're at 11,670. We're actually come back a little bit since then, since those pre-market highs at 675, back into this region down here. We're currently standing around about 620, 630, floating on the NASDAQ. Okay, so again, last but not least is the USA 30 on the Dow Jones. And again, we can see that playing pretty nicely again off those session highs. 30,700 into today's open, and again testing those session highs from yesterday. Now again, Nasdaq led the way yesterday, so we're not kind of testing those FOMC highs from last week, so we are kind of more condensed underneath. But again, 30,700 on our market profiles is our area of interest today, and of course our POC stretches all the way back down into this 34.75. So this region of interest is worth paying close attention to today. That if there is a bit of an impulse down, how does the price action react off these POC levels? So we've got our value highs set, or our areas of interest up here are highs, but we're also checking and validating these market profiles levels of interest. Now, broadly speaking, if we delve down to lower time frames in that first minute or so in the indices, broadly speaking across the board, we are still getting a little bit of buying coming in that first 60, 90 seconds or so, as we see the markets rallying initially. Now, of course, with these impulses in that first kind of 3 to 5 minutes, it's a course of just letting the price action breathe to get that clearer consensus, clear directional bias, and at least that way then we have something to work with. Now, initially, price action is trying to take out these highs, as we alluded to yesterday. So that would be something that we'll be watching in the next kind of 10, 15 minutes into the PMIs at 2:45, and of course then into 3 p.m. when Fed Chair Powell looks to testify on front of Congress. So all eyes really on the price action, on developments. We have our tweet deck ready to go as well for the latest news and developments regarding particularly obviously the PMIs at 2:45, as we said, but also the 3 p.m. as the commentary starts to come in there. Powell yesterday got grilled quite heavily in front of the Senate, and more poignantly the Senate Banking Commission, or kind of Housing Commission as well, both of them. So we wouldn't be surprised to see more grilling come through from Congress today. Now, Congress are generally younger individuals, so it'll be interesting to see how the Congress take, I suppose, particularly the comments yesterday, but also again setting ourselves up for that busier time of the week when we get to Thursday 3 p.m. slot. All right, so that's pretty much it. As we look at the indices now, that initial impulse is kind of faded. So indices, all three now are kind of rejecting those highs from yesterday, 37.80 on the Nasdaq, or on the S&Ps, 11,650 on the Nasdaq, and of course this 30,700 level on Wall Street. So we're keeping an eye into 2:45, into 3 p.m. to then get a clearer consensus for the afternoon as well. All right, so we'll be on board in the discussion group right through the afternoon off the back of Powell, and of course those PMIs coming up shortly. So for those who are in our community, if you have any questions, obviously you can reach us there. All right, thanks a million everyone, and have a great afternoon.